Good morning, everyone. This is Randy from Snap Judgments coming at you with part three of a three-part combine preview series. Today, we are going to look at the defensive back seven, which is the linebackers, cornerbacks, and safeties. And to help me do that, I brought in Matt Chabot. He's a fellow draft professor podcaster. He went to Maryland. He's specializes kind of in the secondary here. He really loves talking about these guys. So, Matt, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell people about your background and so forth.
Yeah, I'm kind of new to this. I've been covering the draft for a little while, like the last 5 or so years. I'm only 23, so I started around when I was 18. But I've been watching the draft since I was a kid. I'm a big Chiefs fan. My family's from Kansas City, but I grew up in Maryland, so I did go to the University of Maryland. So if there's any Terp fans out there, go Terps. Yeah, I played football as a kid, and so I played DB. So watching DBs is a lot of fun to me, and that's what I think I enjoy covering the most. I think that's what I know the most about. So I'm really excited to dig into some of these guys. There's a lot of really fun players in this year's class from top to bottom. So I do look forward to talking about it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good class. It's really especially deep at the linebacker position. The combine is look, the combine shows movement. It doesn't necessarily show football stuff, right? The value I think the value of safeties and linebackers in particular is understated. They're considered low value positions, right? They often talk about you don't want to draft a linebacker or a safety in the top five or top 10. Yet these are the guys who run the defense. And I mean, to me, anyway, I've always thought the value was understated. If you look at Ohio State this year, for instance, I mean, where are their best players? Linebacker and safety. And they were one of the top defenses in the league. What do you think about how value is considered with the linebackers and the defensive backs?
So I think the biggest deal with linebackers, I mean, a lot of the positions that are considered low value positions in the NFL, the positions themselves on the field are important positions, but the issue that makes them less valuable in the terms of the NFL, a lot of the time is because of the depth of talent there is at the position. The running back is the primary example that I use for that, that there are more than 32 capable starting running backs in the NFL. So it's hard to prioritize drafting one in the top five and justify paying one when you know you can get one in free agency. This isn't as true with safeties and linebackers, but it used to be the case, I think, in like the 2010s or so, like early 2010s. There were a lot of very talented linebackers, a lot of big hitting, strong safeties. So the value for safety kind of dissipated, and I think a lot of people have forgotten the value that a good safety brings to your team. The Super Bowl is a great example of that, and you cover the Patriots and great deal. So sorry about the loss, but that was a great game. They had a great season, and there's plenty of recognition for safeties to go around. On the other side, the Seahawks, Nick Amanwari was a huge part of why their defense was so successful and why Mike McDonald had so much of a had such a successful season calling the Seattle defense. And for the Patriots, Craig Woodson was one of the best rookies in the NFL, and especially in that Super Bowl, he played a huge role in almost every play. It felt like he was always around the ball. So the value of a safety is one of the most underrated things in sports. I think it's one of the most undervalued positions in the NFL for sure. And there are not enough guys that can do the hybrid play between linebacker, safety, slot, things like that. So if you can find one of those guys, it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think especially the slot defender kind of, it's more of a slot corner, especially with someone like Nick Worry, for instance. I think that the value is kind of growing right now.
Yeah.
There are many different kinds of linebackers in the NFL as well, and particularly in this draft prospect class. We've got good groups of different types of linebackers. What do you look for, and how do you kind of put those in different buckets?
Yeah, there's a variety of different players that you look for. Your middle linebacker. I mean, it also depends on the type of defense that you run. If you're running an even front defense, a lot of times you're running out three linebackers that you want to specialize in coverage. And my middle linebacker, I want to be a guy that can diagnose the offense, understand what's going on before the snap happens. And a lot of that is shown up in interviews, which I'm not involved in, unfortunately. But uh, I think that you get a lot of value from how much they understand the game. This is why you a lot of times on NFL teams you see hefty veterans, like players who've been in the league for 5, 10 years, playing in that middle linebacker spot. And then on the outsides, you have much more athletic, rangy players who can hit hard in the run game, but stick in coverage at a much broader level. Whereas in odd front defense, you're kind of looking for the mix of those two guys that can diagnose the defense, but they're athletic enough to cover from sideline to sideline.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Now, when we go to defensive backs, just give me kind of an overall, why do you think that NFL teams miss on defensive backs?
Corner is the hardest position to play in the NFL, and I'll live and die on that hill. It's very, very tough to be a quarterback in the NFL, obviously, but being a corner, trying to keep up with some of the best athletes in the league is incredibly difficult. You're going to get beat, you're going to get burned, people are going to talk about you on the internet, and you're going to struggle. There's no corner has ever had a career where they were perfect through the entirety of it. I mean, Daryl Revis had an unbelievable season covering some of the best receivers in the league, and the next year struggle against
Yeah.
some of the best receivers in the league. I mean, this is just how the NFL works. Stephon Gilmore for the Patriots was pretty good for the Bills, incredible for the Patriots, and then slowly started to fade off until he was released. A corner in general is a very, very difficult position. It's easy to miss, and the depth of corner talent really comes down to how well you can develop corner talent. So I don't care where you take a corner. Covering college receivers is not the same as covering NFL receivers. These are the best of the best athletes there are. I would have a lot easier of a time covering a receiver at the University of Maryland than I would coming in and having to cover, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, these guys. That's just the two on the Bengals. You go down a long list of some of the best college receivers there are, now some of the better NFL receivers. Even if you draft somebody in the first round, if you haven't developed them and prepped them for playing in the NFL, it's a very hard transition to make. I think that's a big part of what has made the Chiefs so successful is their ability to draft corners and develop them, whether they're getting them as undrafted free agents or in the first round, all the way through. The Chiefs have been able to find success doing that.
Yeah, and I think that you make a good point with cornerback being a difficult position to play. I think honestly, defense overall tends to be like that because when you really think about philosophically the game, the defense essentially has to be perfect on every play. And it's the plays that they're not perfect that are going to be highlights. So when you see them, it's when they're dropping the ball. Um, so it is definitely. And meanwhile, on the other side of that, I mean, you could have a wide receiver that goes out there and runs 30, 25, 30 routes every game. And they only have to make a catch on 3 or 4 of them really to make an impact. Whereas
Yeah.
the defensive back on the other side of that has to be perfect on all 30.
Yeah, and respectfully for the defensive back, it sounds simple. It sounds like, if I say it, somebody that has been watching football for a long time will be like, yeah, that's very basic. But the defense, especially for a corner, you don't know what's coming. The wide receiver knows exactly what route he's running and where he's going. And as a defensive player, you're one step behind. You're a quarter second behind as you try to react to what the other team is doing. So being able to recognize a play, being able to react on time and have the athleticism to close out and make those plays is incredibly difficult. It's rare that you find a good combination of those two.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. All right. Well, let's start. Let's start that, however, in the middle of the field, right there at the linebacker position, where the defense and the communication all really starts. The evolution of the game. We've kind of seen the death of like the thumper only linebacker. Just as defenses and offenses got smaller and faster, they've kind of become outdated. Um, so now these guys have to do a little bit of everything. Um, that play recognition, run defense, coverage, sometimes tight ends, sometimes even slot wide receivers. Um, I think that especially with the linebacker position, you can often see how instincts are more important than athletic testing, however. Um, do you think that that still remains true? You can take a guy who is a subpar athlete and he could be a great linebacker because of his football instincts and IQ.
Yeah, it there's also an extent to which the role you play matters, and kind of like I mentioned earlier, the being an outside linebacker in an even front defense, you can rely a lot more on that athleticism because you have to cover, you know, a little bit less of the field. So being already going in the right direction doesn't matter as much. And yeah, I'll go back to my Chiefs as an example. Leo Chanel was one of the best athletes I've seen at the draft combine and had an RAS score like through the roof. And I don't know that as a pure middle linebacker, he would have the success that he's had with the Chiefs. But even when he doesn't take the right first step, his ability to explode, get downhill, get to the receiver, get to the running back, get to the tight end is impressive. So I do think that athleticism matters. But if you are going to consistently find success in the NFL in an odd front defense or as the middle linebacker on a team or as a play on nickel sets every down back linebackers, you have to be able to have an understanding of the game. You have to have a strong work ethic. I think that's one of the biggest things with linebackers. A lot of times, if you are a basketball fan, you hear that defense is all about effort. In the NFL, being a linebacker is all about effort, both on and off the field. I want a guy who's going to run every single snap as hard as he can to go make the tackle and then do it again and again and again and again. And then I also want that guy to live and die in the film room, trying to know what play is coming before the ball is snapped.
Yeah, I mean, these guys can be basically tone setters for the defense in that way. Um, so I've broken these out into kind of three buckets, and by all means, add in names that you feel like I'm not including. Right now, we got kind of the Mike linebacker role with C.J. Allen, Deontay Lawson, and Josiah Trotter, who's a very interesting prospect. He's kind of come on late in this process because he's so young. He's a redshirt sophomore. People didn't really expect him to be in this class. Um, you know, what are your thoughts on some of these guys and where you think they might go and what sort of scheme you think that these three specific players might fit in best? And then, like I said, if you think there's anybody else who belongs in this sort of bucket, this sort of discussion, by all means, throw them in there.
Yeah, as far as athletic builds go, these are all very different players, but all have the instincts to be in the right place at the right time. That's really what has made CJ Allen his money. I had 6'1", 235. You're not looking at a guy who's gonna, dominate over and over again with incredible athleticism, but you'll never find a play on the Georgia defense where number 3 isn't around the ball. I mean, he's all over the field at all times, whether it's in the pass game, the run game. He's relentless covering sideline to sideline. And then you go to Deontay Lawson, who I was not quite as impressed with as a lot of other people, but is built like that hybrid safety role that we mentioned before. He has that athletic ability to cover so much ground. And there may be some concerns because he's a little bit on the older side. He's also maybe not the best run defender because he doesn't bring that size. He's only 220 pounds. But again, he's all over the field. And before his injury, he really showed that he has the athletics ability to cover sideline, 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 just like all over the field. So he definitely, his ability to diagnose a play and be in the right place at the right time is really impressive. And if we were talking about thumpers before, Josiah Trotter's that guy. Josiah Trotter will hit you. I do not want to be anywhere near where Josiah Trotter is on the field when he's coming downhill. He's a scary man. I look at the picture we have of him up here. Like it's does that look like a guy you want to stand in front of when he's coming full speed downhill? That's a terrifying guy.
Now, how do you think he compares to his older brother, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., we saw come out just a couple of years ago from Clemson, I think?
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't super impressed with Jeremiah Trotter. I wasn't too shocked when he slipped in the draft. I have my own concerns about Josiah Trotter keeping up in pass coverage. And he's very downhill oriented at 6'2", 240. You would expect that. He's a run stuffing man. He wants to get in on the plays on the goal line. He's going to be a very annoying person to have to go up against. But his first step is always downhill. That was probably the most concerning thing to me is when you watch his film, the first step he takes over and over again is right towards the line of scrimmage. And a lot of times guys sneak past him. His eyes are always in the backfield. And it really feels like sometimes in zone coverages, he just gets lost as to where he is. But he is a sophomore. He's still a young uh, linebacker. He'll come into the NFL. He'll have time to learn. So I have him as linebacker 10 with an early day 3 grade on him. I think round 4, round 3 in that area kind of makes a lot of sense just outside of the top 100. And I think he'll start his career as a big time run stuffer and with the right development can be a full time player. As of right now, if he just comes into the NFL and plays, I think he has a long term career as somebody like Reggie Ragland, if you remember him from years ago, where he was just like, hey, he played for my Chiefs, he played for the Giants, he just came in and stopped the run. Every time he was on the field, you knew that like his first step was forward, and if you ran the ball, good luck getting away from Reggie Ragland.
Yeah, we got a guy like that up here right now on the roster, Jelani Tavai, who
Yeah.
they weren't sure he was going to stick with the Mike Vrabel scheme, but he kind of found his role here and made a little bit of an impact on in terms of the run defense. Um, Now, Deontay Lawson, I know I personally really like the way he kind of like read quarterbacks, able to step in there and make plays on the ball. I thought that was good. CJ Allen, on the other hand, has more of a reputation as a strong run defender with questions about his coverage skills. What do you think about his coverage skills? And do you think there's anything you could see at the combine that would uh, affect your opinion of him and his ability to move and cover tight ends and wide receivers?
Well, first I'll say for Deontay Lawson, I was also really impressed with him as a QB spy. A lot of the
Mm.
time, he would lurk, and quarterbacks didn't have any escape. So in man coverage, he's a fun player to have on your team. He's going to lurk right there in the middle. You're not going to have a running back curl and check down, and he is going to hawk down your quarterback if he tries to scramble. And for CJ Allen, I was impressed with his film. I have him as linebacker 5, and there's one other person I'll mention before we move on here, who I have just slightly above him. But I'm not as concerned. And like we mentioned before, linebacker, especially the Mike linebacker in the middle there, or if you're playing in a 3-4 odd front defense, not as much relying on a player being the most athletic guy on the field as much as you're relying on them to know where to be at the right time. CJ Allen at only 6'1 is going to struggle some in zone coverage because balls will be able to get layered over top of him. He's not a freaky athlete that's going to jump 40 inches off the ground and make plays over the middle. But I felt like as a tackler, he was sideline to sideline. He was all over the field. He was not a fun person to try to get away from. And in zone coverage, I think he'll have the ability and he has the instincts to know where to be. It's just a matter of how much ground he's taking up.
Okay. All right. And for Patriots fans watching, just to translate that into who we're talking about on the defense right now, Robert Spillane's role essentially is what we're talking about. The middle linebacker, the guy who calls the plays, and shuts down the run essentially in our scheme. Now moving on to the next bucket here.
Really quick before
Yeah.
we move past the Mike linebackers, I want to
Mm.
mention that my guy, and he may come up later in this class or later in this, I'm not 100% sure, but I would throw Jacob Rodriguez in that conversation. Absolutely
Yes.
needs to be talked about as a Mike linebacker. He knows where to be, when to be there. The ball skills are unbelievable when it comes to that peanut punch. And, Robert Spillane is a great example of a guy who's going to be in the middle of that defense, knows the play call, leads the guys to be in the right spot. He should have been a Heisman candidate this year. He's going to have a really low floor in a class that is relatively weak at the top. And I think he'll go higher than a lot of people expect because teams are not going to play around with somebody who has had that much college success already. And regardless of the level, he was very impressive. So that is somebody I would mention as a Mike linebacker who's going to have a strong NFL career.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. Jacob Rodriguez is kind of one of those guys who exhibits what I was talking about earlier, where it's like great football instincts, great football IQ. You don't always necessarily have to be the best athlete. And then on top of playing in a position where you, as you outlined earlier, may not necessarily have to be the best athlete sometimes. He's going to be one of those guys. You know, I've talked about him extensively on other episodes, but I think he's going to be one of those guys where you look back later on, like a few years down the road, and you're like, man, how did that guy slip to whatever pick he gets picked at?
Yeah.
Because I think he's just going to outperform wherever he's drafted.
Yeah, we got these guys on the screen right now, and there's plenty of other players in this draft that are high quality athletes. And Jacob Rodriguez is not going to be that high ceiling, high quality athlete that some are looking for, but he is the most consistent player in this draft at almost any position. He is always around the ball. He is always going for the ball when he's tackling somebody. He is not the greatest in pass coverage. He's not an elite athlete, but he's in the right spot. He's going to have a really, really long NFL career. And he's definitely going to be one of those people that, like, you know, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, we took Cleveland Farrell, or like we took blah, 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 you know, these other guys who like struggled later in their career. I never like to bash an individual player, and Farrell had some good games with Washington and things like that. But, you know, you look back, you're like, we passed on this guy for this guy. You know, at some point, there's going to be a player in this class that's a really talented athlete, and people are going to look back and go, oh, we took this athletic linebacker over Jacob Rodriguez. You know what I mean? Like
Well, I mean, the Shamar Stewarts of the world, right?
Yeah.
Shamar Stewart last year, edge rusher, eye-popping athleticism. And I mean, there were questions about the offseason, probably didn't set him on the right path.
Bengals didn't help him.
No, yeah, the Bengals didn't help him or themselves. But
yeah, even like
as is their way, as is their way.
Right. Even like Keon Coleman's a good example, who has not been done right by the Bills organization and was a freak athlete, has had tons of upside, things like that. But look at the players that were drafted after him. There's plenty of Bills fans going, we took Keon Coleman over. Blah, blah. Yeah, like it's.
Yep. But so yeah, moving into these coverage linebackers, and these are just the three I've got highlighted. There are a bunch in this draft, and again, if there are ones that you feel like guys that you feel like should fall into this bucket that I have left off, by all means add them in. These are the guys that I've been keeping an eye on. Now, Sonny Styles is not going to fall into any range that the Patriots can get him anymore. Earlier on in the process, maybe. But then all of a sudden we got really good, and he also got really good, and that just moved us in opposing directions. So he's not really going to be an option for Patriots. He could be an option for your guys, Kansas City, if that's where you would want to go. Lander Barton and Eric Gentry, different in that they're later prospects. Lander Barton, probably, I've got him around like round 4 or 5. Eric Gentry, more like round 6, 7. But longer guys, good in coverage. Interesting to see how they're going to fit in the league. I think this is kind of the linebacker side of folks trying to find someone similar to that Nick Emanwari. Not necessarily the same, but a guy you can leave on the field that's going to be good enough in run defense, good enough in coverage, and be able to kind of help you maintain defensive versatility without exchanging players and bringing players on and off the field. What do you think about this group of guys, any of them specifically, and anybody that you think belongs in this group I didn't include?
Yeah, I love Sonny Styles. I think everybody loves Sonny Styles. It's a hard person to not like. But he's so talented. He's my number 2 player in this draft behind somebody we'll get into later. But Sonny Styles is all over the field. He's definitely the best all-around linebacker as far as both ceiling and consistency goes right now. While I would argue Jacob Rodriguez is a more consistent player, Sonny Styles is athletically just a different type of guy. He can do more things than Jacob Rodriguez or any other linebacker in this class. He probably was even limited by some edge reps by his own teammate, Arvell Reese, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But Sonny Styles is such an unbelievable, athletically gifted guy. He's going to stick with running backs. He's going to stick with tight ends. He can stick with a lot of slot receivers. Just a gifted player that you want on your team. The Chiefs have way too many linebackers as is. I will lose my mind if we take a linebacker in the first round. I will be unheard from on the internet for months on end. But I love Sonny Styles. I really do. And if my team needed a linebacker, I would be incredibly happy. Um, Lander Barton, I was not quite as high on. Definitely a significantly older player. And I felt like a lot of times he got caught in arm tackles. He was kind of like, he's a bigger guy. I mean, you're 6'4", 235. Um, but the length, I felt like he got away with arm tackles a lot early in his career at Utah and kind of continued that instead of really putting the shoulder into things like that. But he has really good instincts. He is the Mike linebacker at Utah, and he has a great ability to be in the right space. Great in pass coverage is exactly what I put. A high quality athlete. And he has upside to get better, but being on the older side and some of those struggles with, um, arm tackling, run defense, that was my only like major concern with him. And Eric Gentry is just fun. Eric Gentry is just fun. Somebody is going to have a lot of fun with him. Bare minimum, this guy's going to be a really good special teams player. The longest arms in the world, probably.
Yeah, he's a stunt double for Slender Man.
Seriously, he's 6'6", 220. I don't know what other position you would play at 6'6", 220. Like maybe you're a receiver or a really thin tight end, but he's going to be a good time if he can figure out where to be, when to be there, which is a very essential part of linebacker. But if he works hard and he gets in the right defense, he really, to me, feels like one of those even front outside linebackers, gets in the right spots, and he just takes up space. Don't try and layer a ball over him because he'll jump up, he'll get it, and his arms, he's going to hawk that thing down from a next atmosphere. He had a lot of great plays at the Senior Bowl, at the line of scrimmage, getting his hands
Shrine
up.
Bowl.
Working Shrine Bowl at the Shrine Bowl, working his way around coverages and stuff like that. He was very impressive.
Yeah, he looked really good in zone coverage, during practice and so forth there. Lander Barton, he's a guy that I'd been interested in throughout most of this process. And watching him, the one drawback I had with him is I really wish he played with more intensity. I wish you hear guys hair on fire. They are not talking about Lander Barton. Okay. Lander Barton's just kind of out there sometimes. And I feel like sometimes he doubts himself a little. He doesn't try to make the tackle. He elongates his route. It's just bad angles. And it's either bad angles or bad athleticism or a combination of the two. Because I just feel like there are times where I'm like, dude, hit him. And he's right there, hit him. Exactly. And he's just running alongside trying to get a better angle. And I'm like, man, I just wish, and then when he's rushing the passer, like he's the guy, he doesn't even bother to get his hands up. It's like, all right, you're 6'4", 6'5". At least put your damn hands up. You don't have to get to the quarterback. You can affect the pass in other ways. And I just, he's got a lot of football IQ, football knowledge. He comes from a deep football family. Utah does a great job developing linebackers and teaching them. You cannot teach that sort of fire inside. And I thought that was the one thing that Barton really lacked.
Yeah, he was higher on my board last year and has kind of been shoved down in a deep linebacker class and is more of a mid-day 3 grade for me. And it is almost exactly because of what you said. If a tight end catches the ball in the flat, I don't trust you to go hit him. If a running back is coming up the gap, I'm afraid that he's going to shed contact off of you. Like him versus Javonte Williams wouldn't be a pretty sight. And I think that he has the ability to lower his shoulder and make big hits. He's 235 pounds. I don't care how tall you are. That weight moves people. But a lot of times I really felt like he was reaching with his arms, trying to wrap up legs, and smaller guys in the NFL, they're just going to eat that and run right through it. So that would be my biggest concern with him. And you definitely want those types of players that are going to be all over the field. They're going to be fighting to play. Linebacker hurts. I've never played linebacker. I don't want to play linebacker. Linebacker hurts. I mean, you want guys that love that stuff. Like it's the type of player I'm not in the interview room. I don't know anything about Lander Barton. I'm not going to comment on him, like, his desire to play the game or anything like that. But it just feels like he's not into the tackling, hard hitting portion of it. He feels like a massive safety, and it's he'll need to work on that some. I think for him to find success in the NFL. And then there is
Yeah.
one other guy that I would mention in this group. Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma is somebody I have graded in my top 10. Super athletic player, 6'4", 240 pounds. Brent Venables loved this guy. Brent Venables right now is watching a lot of the players that he first recruited at Oklahoma declare, and Daniels was one of my favorite players in this year's draft from the beginning. Since his transfer to Norman out of Oklahoma State, he's been one of the best linebackers in the nation. He's just everywhere. I mean, he's a great tackler in space, and he will hit you. He 240 pounds moves people. He hits you. And very skilled in pass coverage, and is an incredible blitzer as well. He's somebody we may mention in the hybrid area as well, but this is a guy who I think will test really well. Not always in the right spot. Kind of sometimes he takes long strides. Sometimes smaller running backs can get him off balance, but I think that he has all the athletic talent in the world to succeed in the NFL, and he'll play very well. And definitely one of those guys that's like, go get the ball. I want to be on the ball. I want to be around the ball. I really like his skill set.
Nice. That's a good. He was not on my radar at all. I'm going to have to watch some tape and check him out.
He's super fun.
All right. Well, we are going to move into the kind of the hybrid edge adjacent linebackers, if you will. And right here, up here, I've got pictured Arvell Reese. He's the guy that we're certainly not going to get a shot at, but he's interesting because he really kind of highlights the new age edge linebacker hybrid thing that has kind of taken over the NFL a little bit in some ways. We've got Jake Golday there, who a lot of people don't really know, started as an edge rusher at Central Arkansas, was initially recruited as an edge rusher, moved to linebacker, and he's still kind of got that body, that size at like 6'4", 6'5", 240, 245. And I've got Harold Perkins Jr. listed in there too. He's a guy who a lot of different opinions about him and where he's going to fit in the league, how well he's going to play, and all of that. What do you think about these guys, the group in general, and again, anybody I might have missed out on?
There is not a single person in the draft who I am rooting for more than Harold Perkins Jr. I love the kid. I want to see him succeed so bad. This was a guy who would have been in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick if he had not gotten injured. I mean, his talent level is something that his athletic talent level is something that people have not seen. I mean, in college football as a freshman, he was one of the most dominating edge rushers in the nation around the same time that Will Anderson was there. And we all remember how good Will Anderson was. Harold Perkins was giving SEC tackles fits off the edge. And then as a linebacker, he was able to drop in coverage and stick with running backs and tight ends. The ACL injury has set him back significantly. I have an early day 3 grade on Harold Perkins, but I have no idea what his role is in the NFL. He's 6 foot 220. And he plays this like star linebacker role at LSU that only exists in like somewhere between 5 and 7 defenses in the NFL, something like that. And probably only 5 of them actually need a player like that. And so I do suspect he'll slip a good bit in the draft. We'll see how his medicals are. I won't see them. I don't think many of us will actually get a report on it, and I won't get to lay my eyes on it. But if he's healthy, some of that burst was back again this year at LSU. And if he's healthy and he gets back to that athlete that he was as a freshman, oh my God. I mean, I can't say enough. I don't think I've written a longer evaluation of a player than I did about Harold Perkins when I wrote it 2 years ago, saying like, look, he's 6 foot 220, but you don't realize how athletic he is. You have no idea. I mean, just go watch some of what he did as a freshman alone at LSU, and then as a sophomore. And the injury was just killer for him. Arvell Reese is fun. I think I will go insane if I see somebody compare him to Micah Parsons ever again. It happens every time they talk about him because Micah Parsons is the best example of a guy who was a dominating middle linebacker and then moved to this like edge role. They're all very different players. Micah Parsons, Abdul Carter, Arvell Reese. We've seen a fair share of players make this kind of transition. Arvell Reese is just a different level of athlete, and another player that as a QB spy, good luck getting away from him. So I think in a odd front defense where you're playing not that middle linebacker, but more that outside linebacker, and then even in nickel sets can move inside, Arvell Reese can flex between those two things. And you want to, one of the most valuable things you can have in the NFL is causing a quarterback when they first break the huddle and get to the line, they take a full 2-3 seconds trying to go, okay, where is that guy? I have to find him. So you have to look for Arvell Reese. And again, we're going to talk about his teammate later on, who I think is even harder to find than he is. So definitely is going to be a very talented player. I would love to see him end up with the Commanders and Dan Quinn. I feel like, Dan Quinn did make Micah Parsons a lot of who Micah Parsons is. He was a very talented player at Penn State. Don't get it twisted, but Dan Quinn did a really good job utilizing him. Arvell Reese and Dan Quinn or Arvell Reese and Micah Parsons are very different players, but Dan Quinn is really good at using that style of athlete and just making athletes work. And I'm very impressed with Jake Olday as well. He's also an incredible athlete. Definitely needs some more time to work with linebacker coaches, veteran linebackers, to kind of get that feel for where to be. But this is a great example. I mean, a lot of the last 6 guys that we've shown on these graphics are going to be like not quite boom or bust, but definitely a high potential to boom. And if one of them misses, we're going to be talking about how teams took one of these guys over the guys that we talked about as the first 3.
Yeah, absolutely. One later round guy that I've been interested in throughout this process, and I'm not 100% sure I could even put my finger on why, but just get your opinion on him while I got you here. Wesley Besaint out of Miami.
Yeah. I was honestly not in love with his tape. I have a priority free agent grade on him. Older side player, a really unique prospect style at 6'1", 225, definitely comes in with that like big safety, tiny linebacker kind of role. And like we mentioned with Harold Perkins, and we mentioned before with some of these coverage guys, there's only so many teams that can do to have a tiny linebacker or a big safety, because you can only really have one of those guys on the field at the same time. Like having Harold Perkins and Wesley Basante on the field at the same time, run the ball. Like they're going to struggle to be consistent against the run. But I felt like in man coverage with he often was solid. He got burnt to the outside several times against quicker players for Miami this year, but his ability to wrap up is very, very, very impressive in space. And I think that he can be a good coverage guy. I look at him more as a special teams guy in the NFL. But I think there is some potential there for him to work in a heavy coverage defense.
Okay. Yeah, just one of those guys who his name had popped up throughout the process to me and just caught my eye for one reason or another. One last guy before we leave the linebacker group, and that's, what do you know? Do you know anything about the TCU linebacker Caleb Elarms Orr?
I was just about to say his name. I was going to make sure we said his name before we got off here. He is in the top 10 linebackers for me.
Give it to us. Give it to us, because he's new to me. So,
dude, I am a huge fan of him. I watched him a little while ago and was just baffled that I hadn't heard his name very much in the process already. I was absolutely going to make sure that we said his name before we got off linebackers. He is so talented as an athlete at 6'2", 235. Just that perfect linebacker frame. I really would love to see him in like an odd front defense, one of those 2 middle linebackers, often in the right space. He had 130 tackles this year for TCU. He was everywhere. I mean,
that's in 12 games or something.
You will never find a play where he was not around the ball. It was ridiculous. I mean, TCU had 2 NFL level linebackers. This guy was just everywhere. I mean, he has the range to be a full-time middle linebacker. He's able to rush some off the edge. He's a very good blitzer. I wouldn't say that he's going to consistently be like one of these guys where you can play off the edge without the length and stuff like that. But man, he's definitely one of those players that's just like, he wants to be around the ball, and he plays like his pants are on fire. Right? He's just everywhere. So I really,
What's a rough
really, really
size on
like him.
him?
6'2", 235.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Right
a
on. All right,
very
good
like an
size.
average NFL size for a middle linebacker, which is kind of why I talk about that, you know, odd front middle linebacker. I think that you get two guys like that, and teams are going to have a tough time managing.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up the linebackers with that and move on into the cornerbacks. I guess just to wrap up the linebackers, look, as you watch this combine, folks, don't overreact to 40 times. Remember, the linebacker position is something where IQ, having the right angle, being able to finish your tackles can make up for a little bit of limited athleticism. There's still a certain baseline you've got to achieve to play in the NFL,
Yeah.
of course. Don't get me wrong. But where you fit and how you fit and how well you're able to diagnose what's going on in front of you probably drives where you're going to be drafted more than the numbers that we're going to see out of Indianapolis next week. Um,
Yeah.
Now moving into the cornerback position, um, look, cornerback is a very scheme dependent position, right? The system fit is important. You need a cornerback who thrives in press man, for instance, who's going to struggle in a zone heavy scheme. You need somebody in the slot. You're gonna, or there's less kind of like bouncing between positions with some of these guys. You really sometimes need specialists, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, so you're looking for man versus zone traits. You're looking for recovery speed, top end speed, and a lot of this also is going to be done in the interview rooms, like you were talking about earlier. Confidence, memory matter, the ability to know what you're doing. Um, in terms of the drills, foot quickness, hip fluidity, these are all important things that we're going to be keeping an eye on next week. I've got these guys kind of grouped differently for at least the first two groups. First, we've got the round one corners. These guys are fairly solid round one grades consensus wise. I would say Colton Hood is kind of maybe belongs in the fringe bucket instead, but Jermod McCoy and Mansoor Delane should both be in the round one of the draft. What do you think about these guys, and what do you want to see out of them at the combine? I know Mansoor Delane in particular is like they both have different questions to answer next week. Jermon McCoy regarding health, and Mansoor Delane has rumored to have like 1% hand size and 5% arm length and stuff like that, 5 percentile. Just very small for a corner. What are you looking for these guys out of the combine next week, and where do you expect to see him go off the board in the draft?
Yeah, if Jermod McCoy participates in the combine and moves, I'm happy. I want to hear how teams are viewing his knee. He missed the whole year this year with an ACL injury he suffered way earlier. So there definitely is that's going to be the most concerning thing for Jermod McCoy. He's an impressive player. I mean, if his 2024 film alone makes him a first round pick, you just watch the way that he moved. It probably would have been the same way for Harold Perkins if he had declared last year. Is kind of how you can look at it. There's a good bit of risk there just because of the injury. But man, Jermod McCoy was really good. So you may see kind of like a Will Johnson fall where Will Johnson fell pretty deep into the draft because some concerns about an injury with him. But Will Johnson played well this year. So you never know exactly how those things go. But Jermod McCoy, I just want to hear how healthy he is. His testing doesn't mean a whole ton to me because I've seen how he plays against SEC receivers. I will say that when it does come to corner, especially when we're talking outside of round one or the top 50, testing matters a ton to me. I really, really, really care about how good of an athlete you are because, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, corner is one of the hardest positions to play in the NFL. You got to learn how to play in the NFL. I don't think there's hardly any corners that come straight out of college, and this is why we see so many miss rates at the top. There's hardly any corners that come straight out of college have all the tools or have all the the mental side of things. Like Jeff Okudah was always talked about as one of the smartest corners in college football, and athletically, a lot of the time, it really just felt like he couldn't keep up. And there's plenty of other guys that are like that. So I really, really care about how strong of an athlete you are, especially with your movement skills, how well you flip your hips, how fast you are, how much you're able to accelerate. Don't care as much about your 40 time as your 10-yard split in the very beginning. Just see if you're able to get off the line really well and explode with your the upper parts of your legs. Delane will be good to see that. I think seeing how he moves, I'd be more concerned about his arm length than his hand size. If his hands are small, to me, that just means that he's not going to be holding. So works for me. As he may not catch a bunch of interceptions, but I don't think that was what he's advertised as all that well. He's very versatile. He can play in the slot a little bit, but really was more of an outside guy at LSU, and he was just locking people down. And at some point, tape reigned supreme. And when you watched Mansour Delane, nobody was getting open against him. Colton Hood, I'm not as big of a fan of Colton Hood as some other people are. He's just outside of my top 10 corners, but a lot of people really like it. And I can understand it. He's in my top 100. I got 11 corners in my top 100. So he definitely sneaks in there. I can see him going in the first round. I mean, with Jermon McCoy out, Colton Hood stepped right into that role of the corner one for Tennessee, and he looked good against a wide variety of SEC receivers. He looks more thin than he is on film. But
not in this picture though. In this picture, right. He looks jacked.
Yeah, he looks yoked. So I was like, it's hard to really put a number on that. But as a zone corner, I was pretty impressed. I would like to see a little bit more consistency in his tackling. But he'll be a good scheme fit for teams that run a lot of cover 3, plays that outside third. I think that's a good role for him in the NFL.
Yeah, I think this grouping is interesting to me because I have questions about all three of them. Number one, Mansour Delane in terms of measurables, but also in terms of like this is the first year that he really came on. I'm a little bit curious about that. Jermon McCoy obviously has the medical, and the interesting thing with him, it's kind of Derek Stingley a few years ago kind of set the trend in place of like, I'm going to put one good season on tape and then I don't care after that. And that's kind of what Jermon McCoy did. Cause there was rumors he could have come back. Could he have come back even for an all-star game or something? Who knows? But he had one good season on tape and that's good enough. And hey, it got Derek Stingley drafted top 5. So
it probably would have happened with Harold Perkins too. Hey, Harold Perkins probably would have had the same results if he had declared and not played this year. Seriously, it's like with that, there's a lot of guys that do that, whether it's the injury or not. Just being able to put out that you're a capable player is a huge portion of what gets you drafted.
Yeah. And Colton Hood, I've got again, I don't know any of these guys personally. Like there are Patriots players I've met and I've opined on in the past on my episodes, and that's based upon personal interactions with them. And I'll say that. Colton Hood, I do not know, but I do know he's 20 years old. He's in his 3rd year of school. He's playing at his 3rd college. I know he shut it down early at the Senior Bowl. I'm not sure why, because usually people do that after they dominated. And the only time I saw Colton Hood's name was the times he was getting burned. So I saw he had shut it down early. I just have questions about him from an outsider's perspective about some of those things. They're little miniature red flags to me in terms of kind of personality, I guess you would say. Yeah. Now moving into this next group of fringe round 1 corners, I'm sure there are a couple guys that I don't have listed in this graphic, but look, I can only fit so many guys in the graphic. At some point, it becomes an aerial photo. So 3 guys is what I got in the graphic. But Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina, Keith Abney. Oh no. Oh, I got the names screwed up. Anyway, Keith Abney is there on the right out of Arizona State. Chris Johnson's the one in the middle. My bad. But these guys are definitely fringe 1 corners. I've seen them mocked towards the end of the first round consistently throughout the process. Towards the end of the first round, early in the second round. Chris Johnson, we saw at the Senior Bowl. He got lit up a little bit at the Senior Bowl. He wasn't great. I don't think I've seen either Cisse or Abney at either of the other All-Star events, whether the Shrine or the Senior Bowl. I didn't see their names mentioned, which can sometimes be good for a corner. What do you think about these guys? And do you think anybody else kind of fits into this range, this round 2, maybe round 1 range?
Yeah, I don't put for corners at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl or any of those one-on-one drill activities, I put a lot more stock in corners that perform well than I put in corners that perform poorly. Performing poorly in one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl, to me, I can shrug my shoulders and say, you're not expected to win those, and you didn't win those. I'm not too concerned with a player getting burnt in one-on-one drills. On the other hand, if they keep up in one-on-one drills, that catches my eye. Both definitely Chris Johnson struggled some at the Senior Bowl, but it's not exactly something that is his strong suit. You know, the type of press man coverage and things like that, and was out physical sometimes as a coverage corner, which is weird considering how good he is as a tackler. In space, I was really impressed with his ability to step up, make big tackles, and play in zone coverages. They're not testing you in zone coverages at these bowl games. I mean, you'll see it some in the game itself, but the film tells a lot more for Chris Johnson than anything else. If a team drafts him and expects him to be a man corner, you better be ready to work with him some in jam situations and stuff like that, because definitely in contested catch situations, he was bullied a little bit. Brandon Cisse looks like he's Dylan Stewart on here. He's a big man too.
Yeah.
And in real life, he's a pretty big guy at 6 foot 290. You're talking about a very similar size, or 190. 6 foot 190.
There's no way he's 290.
Yes. Yeah, that would be crazy. So all three of these guys are about 6 foot 190. Abney is about 5'11", 195. All of these guys are really strong players. I mean, they don't have elite size, they don't have elite length, but they have that solid, reliable corner type of build that if you take them second round, third round, they're going to come out, they're going to play, and they're going to play well. They're not going to I don't see any of these three guys being the type of player that you draft and go, oh my God, this is who we took. You know what I mean? So I was pretty happy with these guys, and there's plenty of other players. I mean, this is a corner class that to me has 11, 12, 13 guys that could be top 100 prospects. So plenty of guys that could go in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Cisse was getting a lot of first-round hype, and then Casey Concepcion came along and single-handedly knocked this dude out of first-round discussions.
Seriously.
Shocking. I think Abney and Chris Johnson suffer a little bit from East Coast bias, where they play on the West Coast. A lot of East Coasters don't really see their games live. They learn about them late in the process, etc. Abney, the thing that sticks out to me is this guy I heard this recently on a podcast, was a professional inline skater at like the age of 5. So we're talking a guy who was like aiming to be an Olympic inline skater. And then something about like COVID came along, kind of set that off course, and he kind of substituted everything with football. What brings that up in my mind is I remember Tom Brady recently talking about JSN and how he moves like a like a figure skater, how his movements are so smooth. And Keith Abney's movements are a little bit like that. They're very smooth, good in coverage. And I think a lot of that background kind of shows up in the way he's able to move out there on the field.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that's just going to be a funny story. Like, when he gets drafted, they're going to be like, fun fact about Keith Abney, and then they're going to show his inline skating. They're going to do that already.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, definitely a very gifted athlete. I mean, it feels like whatever sport he plays, he'll be able to succeed at it. And was one of the best players in the Big 12, covering some of the most talented receivers. He got to go up against Jordan Tyson over and over again in practice. So this is a player that I think he'll find success in the NFL. I'll wait until we get to the next spot before I start mentioning corners that I think we need to talk about, because there's so many of them. I'm sure that if I start listing them, I'm going to overlap with the next couple.
Here's on Chris Johnson and the Senior Bowl thing. One thing that I always notice about these events like the Senior Bowl and so forth, when you're doing the one-on-one practices, they're so heavy with the hands, with the flags, because a cornerback, and understandably, you'd rather get flagged than beat. You don't want to get, you don't want to get dunked on a highlight. And
Yeah.
so I thought the guys that went out there and tried to play straight up without getting super handsy, those are the guys that kind of impressed me in that sort of exercise. And I thought Chris Johnson did that. But it's a transition into a guy that I know you're pretty high on. Because but he also tends to get a little bit handsy at times.
Well,
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Davison Igbinosun and kind of where you feel like he fits into this draft?
so I'm going to be the biggest Davis Igbinosun fan that you find on the internet. Probably, I have a first round grade on him. I have him graded above Mansour Delane, although I think Delane is a very talented player. I got 3 corners that I have with first round grades on him. I have Davis Igbinosun as one of them. Probably won't go there, but that's where I think he belongs. And the main reason why is simply that he has been so incredible in coverage when he's not flagged. When he is flagged, he's still good in coverage. He just held the guy. And so that was really the biggest issue that showed up with him, especially last year. That's 100% what caused him to return to school last year. He definitely got feedback from scouts saying, hey, dude, if you're coming in and
Keep your
twice a
hands to
game,
yourself.
yeah, twice a game, you're costing us pass interference penalties. And this in the NFL, they're not just 15 yards. We don't want to have you out there. This year, those penalties were cut in quarter. 1/4 of the penalties that he had last year. And I
Okay.
don't think enough people recognized how much clear effort he put into not only reducing the penalties, but then the success he had at reducing the penalties. I don't think he's getting his flowers for doing that. And as a whole, Davis Igbinosun, if Jermod McCoy is my corner one, if Jermod McCoy isn't healthy, I don't know that there's a corner who can do it all better than Davis Igbinosun can. This guy can tackle. He can play in zone coverage. He knows where to be. His ball skills are incredible. In man coverage, he has the athleticism to stick with just about anybody. And when he jams you hard. I mean, he will bully you off the line of scrimmage. I mean, I was super impressed with his strength. He was productive. He's played incredibly well in some of the biggest games of the year. Just a talented player. I think that his athleticism is a plus. He's just one of my favorite players in this year's class. I don't think that you can really go wrong with him. And one specific thing that I would mention for him is also that he's played in 3 different defenses. He's played for Ole Miss with Pete Golding. He's played at Ohio State with Matt Patricia, and then he played with a new DC at Ohio State as well. So 3 different defenses, 3 different schemes, and succeeded in all 3 of them. As a freshman with Pete Golding, with Matt Patricia, and an NFL style variety of coverages defense, he has been very good in anywhere you put him. So I'm a huge fan of his, and I really look forward to seeing how he plays in the NFL. I think he's going to be a steal.
Nice. Yeah. We'll have to keep our eye on him next week for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Now let's move along into this next group. Now we have slot and nickel cornerbacks, but I don't think just calling slot cornerbacks in one group kind of properly, uh, separates them because we've got big slots and then we've got kind of the more traditional smaller slot guys. Up here in New England, we have Marcus Jones, smaller slot guy. That's exactly who kind of you're talking about in that group. But I think that these bigger corners interest me because I think a lot of people are going to be looking for that Nick Emanwari type of player, right? You get a big body, 6'3", 6'4", 200 plus pounds who can man cover. And then can he be enough in the run game? Some of these guys, I think they might end up playing as a big slot defender in the NFL. Others might end up on the boundary still. What do you think about kind of that trend, trying to find those guys out of these big, long corners, maybe, and just specifically like these 3 guys? Anybody else that kind of fits in that bucket? Where do you think they might go? That sort of thing,
Uh, for starters of these 3 guys, I think Stooks is the best player. I have him as a slot in the NFL. I think that's exactly where he fits in. Traden Stooks has one of the best stories in the class. They'll 100% talk about it. 5 defensive coordinators in 5 years. He was an was an unrecruited player out of high school. Only ended up actually going to Arizona because like his dad knew the DB coach or something like this, and then he came in as a walk-on. Only played a couple snaps as a freshman, and then the rest was history. He was just unbelievable. So Stooks has been a really reliable member of their defense. And again, through 3 head coaches, 5 defensive coordinators, he's remained loyal to their program. So just a personal story of definitely somebody that I'm rooting for. I've seen people mention that he could be a safety. He's not going to blow you away with his testing, but really good feel for the game, really consistently contributes and can kind of do it all. Both of these other 2 guys, Prysock and Davis, are going to be like 6'4", lengthy corners. I do fear that both of those guys are going to kind of get the Tariq Woolen treatment. Even if they don't run Tariq Woolen speed, they're going to get the like, yikes, 6'4" corner. Tariq Woolen is one rookie year that was pretty good and then kind of fell off a cliff. These 2 guys are they're going to bring you all the good things that come with being 6'4", but they're going to bring you all the bad things that come with it as well. I'm a little bit higher on Prysock than I am on Takario Davis. I feel like Prysock moves a little bit better. He's also an inch smaller. I feel like his ability to kind of keep up with faster, quicker receivers, especially stronger route runners, is going to be what keeps him on the field. Whereas I think Takario Davis, if he gets matched up against, they mismatch him and he gets matched up with like Khalil Shakir or Chris Olave or Jackson Smith and Jigba or Amon-Ra St. Brown, he'll get shaken out of his shoes. He's just like, ankles sometimes can be stiff and it's hard for him to get back that balance. You take long steps when you're 6'4". That's just the truth. So you go up against somebody who's 5'10", it's going to be a lot harder for you to get out of your stance and catch up with them, especially when they're closer to the ground, blowing up out of the ground.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, by the way, to viewers who don't know the background of these guys or whatever, Sicario Davis and Ephesians Prysock, despite being pictured here in different uniforms, is just for the sake of being able to differ these guys. They actually play on the same team. Sicario Davis did play in Arizona, and that's the uniform you're seeing him here. But Ephesians Prysock and Sicario Davis both played at Washington, where clearly they have a type.
Yeah.
Ephesians Prysock is one of those guys that I think he's going to be a sleeper in this draft. I like him and I like Hezekiah Massis in kind of the same range, maybe like late day 2, early day 3 type of guys. I think that's super value for them. And Prysock, like physically, just rocked up, stands out of these sorts of groups. One of those guys that it's like, just in terms of like his presentation or whatever, in terms of how you see him, he's just very physically imposing, I guess is how I'm trying to put it. Now moving over to the smaller side of this, Avion Terrell arguably should have been in the first round or fringe first round bucket, but a lot of people think that he might be a slot only corner just given his size. His brother obviously plays for the Falcons right now. And then Chandler Rivers from Duke also into this group. He's a much smaller defender, about 5'9.5", 5'10", something like that. D'Angelo Pons, another guy in this group. Now, Pons is the guy who there are people who think even at 5'8" and change or whatever he stands at, that he could be an outside boundary defender. And you're people. Okay. So tell me about it. Make the case.
You would have to go to blows with me to convince me that that I should bet against D'Angelo Pons. You're not going to find somebody. He's 5'9", 170 pounds, came in a little over 5'8", which people were concerned that he was going to be. 5'9" works for me. Short arms works for me. You watched him play at Indiana. This guy played against some of the biggest, the best receivers. He held his own against Jeremiah Smith, 6'4", massive wide receiver, super talented player. I love D'Angelo Pons. This guy is a scrappy SOB. I have no interest in being guarded by D'Angelo Pons, no matter what type of receiver I am. I think he can play in the slot. He's capable in the run game of making tackles in the open field. He's a capable blitzer, which may come as a surprise to some people that he is such a good tackler. He's physical. I mean, he's not afraid to put his body on the line to make tackles. He's not afraid to put his body on the line at the line of scrimmage. He doesn't care how big you are. He doesn't care if you're a tight end. He'll go try and tackle. He may get bullied. I've seen him get blown up several times, whether it's as some big guy coming down the field to block him, things like that. But I mean, he held his own against Jeremiah Smith. I mean, what more do you want to see from him? You're looking at a 6'4" guy who's comped to Julio Jones, and 5'9", 170 D'Angelo Pons. I mean, had more than held his own against him. I mean, he looked good. So I I think that it's a simple thing to say that 5'9", 170 doesn't have the length to stay out there, but he has not given me any reason to think that he can't. So far in his career, he's stuck out there and against the best of the best in college football. He's played up to that competition. So I really like D'Angelo Pons. I have him in my top 50. I'm not moving him down from my top 50. I don't know how you can bet against a guy who's that size, never gave up, continues to be one of the best corners in his area. He was the best corner on a championship football team who played against the best of the best. So
it's hard to argue for sure. What would be your pro comp for him? I keep comping him in my head to Marcus Jones. I think that's just a size thing, to be honest, and it's a Patriots thing too, I guess. But
yeah, there's I said something to Bryce Carter earlier today, who is a fellow Chiefs coverage guy over at Arrowhead Addict, and let me see, because he posted something about Pons. And he also used Marcus Jones. And the guy that I used was Isaiah Rodgers for the Vikings, and had played for the Eagles and things like that. Also, an old Maryland guy, Jacorian Bennett. Both of those guys have had some success in the NFL, not a ton, but some. Isaiah Rodgers has a real nose for the ball. He had that one game in the middle of nowhere that was like the one game of his life. He had forced 3 or 4 turnovers in a game. It was nuts. But D'Angelo Pons is that scrappy type of I don't care how big you are. I don't care how big I am. Get open. Good luck. I'm on your hip. Isaiah Rodgers' coverage skills are just like that. But I also was another guy who's 5'9", by the way. Isaiah Rodgers, tiny little man. But he'll come up and hit. He'll come up and tackle. I mean, it's again, the biggest concern when somebody's 5'9" is that they're going to back down. I'm not as concerned that you're going to get beat physically until I see you get beat physically. If you back down from it 100 times, then I'm like, okay, well, now we never really know. Yeah, I've never seen D'Angelo Pons back down from a fight.
Fair enough. All right. Well, listen, before we transition into the safeties, I'm sure you got a couple corners you'd like to mention that I've forgotten about here. Why don't you throw out some names and just a quick little, one-liner after them or whatever.
Yeah, I'll just drop down a couple. I mean, the two guys on the screen, Avion Terrell's somebody worth mentioning. I'm not as big on him as other people. He's going to be just outside my top 50. I felt like every now and then this was so true with so many Clemson guys. Sometimes it just felt like their heart wasn't really in it, and he got picked on every now and again. And that was just kind of weird for me, because then there were other times that his talent was how are you sticking with some of the best receivers in the nation? Chandler Rivers is a really physical slot corner who's going to be listed as an undersized player in this year's draft. Devin Moore from Florida is a name to keep an eye on. I have him in my top 75. Malik Muhammad from Texas is going to get a variety of different things. And then two kids from Toledo that I like, Andre Fuller and Avery Smith, are interesting names to watch. And the last guy that I have in my top 100, neither of the Toledo guys are, but they're early day threes that I think could come and contribute in the NFL. But the last guy that I 100% want to mention, Julian Neal from Arkansas, only other corner that I have in my top 100. This is the best man-to-man corner in the draft. If the Panthers take him, it'll be the biggest disservice in NFL history because of how much Ejiro Evero likes to run zone coverage. I want to see that guy in man coverage 50, 60, 75% of the snaps. He'll line up right in front of you, 200 pounds, shoves you off the line of scrimmage. He's not going to go make a ton of interceptions, a ton of PBUs, because nobody's going to want to throw the ball his way because he's right on you. So definitely keep an eye out for him.
That's a New England type of guy up here. And when Mike Vrabel took over, he called it cat coverage. He said, you got that cat? I got this cat. Let's go play ball,
Yeah.
The one guy that you mentioned that I'd like to ask about is Malik Muhammad there. I've heard people talk about him and say that he might be slot only because of size, but I just don't see this. I mean, he's almost 6 foot. He's over 180. I think he could play on the boundary. I think he's got the skills.
He's nowhere near good enough as a tackler to be that close to the ball off the line of scrimmage. I think he's, again, kind of like D'Angelo Pons, never going to back down from a fight. He does look wiry on film. And I think some people were concerned that he was going to come in below 185, and that kind of hung around when he did come in at 185. It every now and then he gets run over, but at Texas, this guy, he's playing in the SEC every single week. He's a big part of why people were like, what just happened to Ryan Williams? He locked down Ryan Williams that whole game. I do hate the way that Texas ran their defense last year. So much cover three, evaluating their DBs, Michael Taff, him, and Jalen Chabot was a total nightmare because it was just watching them drop into cover three. It had to have been 60, 70% of their snaps was just base cover three. It was so frustrating to me. Malik Muhammad's a better player than that. I would love to see him be in a little bit more man coverage. He's not as physical as some people like, straight up, but he has the instincts to be a good NFL player. He's not afraid to come hit you. So I have a early day 3 on Malik Muhammad.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, yeah, let's slide right on over into the safeties. Now, look, safeties, like we talked about at the top of the program here, probably I think it's one of the more important spots on the field. Okay, they might be undervalued, they might be underpaid, but I think when you get, a Kyle Hamilton in the room, you open things up. A couple of years ago, anybody who's been listening to me for a long time knows I was absolutely in love with Brian Branch. I don't understand how he didn't go top 10 in that draft. And I still don't understand it looking back. Fell right to the second round, an instant transition for the Detroit Lions defense. You get a good safety in the room, and you will transform your defense. Now, top safeties here, I have listed, obviously there's a guy that's not on this graphic, and that's because the Patriots are not going to have a shot at him. I know and it's funny because you mentioned at the start, we were talking about Sonny Styles, and you said, we're going to talk about the number one player, his teammate, later. And we got to the edge defenders, and I was like, maybe it's this guy. But no, I know it's this guy now. Caleb Downs, not pictured here. Possibly a really good talent at safety. I hate using words like generational and stuff like that, but excellent talent at safety. The guys we realistically have a crack at if we're interested in safety for the Patriots. Dylan Thieneman, Kamari Ramsey, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, not necessarily in that order, lead the group. Give us a few thoughts about Caleb Downs, and then we'll kind of get into the rest of the safety class there.
You will listen. I will cry grown man tears if Caleb Downs is on the board at 9 and I hear any other name called for the Kansas City Chiefs. And like you said, safety is so valuable. It is the most undervalued position in the NFL, especially that strong safety hybrid that can move over the field. My opinion, the most undervalued position in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs are a huge proponent of that. You can look into the Chiefs have gone down a line of safeties: Eric Berry, Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reed, Jordan Hicks. Just such a long line of incredibly talented players in that safety room. I'd love for Caleb Downs to be next. Caleb Downs is just, I said Jaden Hicks. Don't know why I said that. Jordan Hicks is a pitcher who's not very good. But Caleb Downs is great. This is my number one player in the class. I use the word generational once in a generation when talking about a player. Caleb Downs maybe the only example in the last. Caleb Downs, Brock Bowers. Those are the only examples I can think of like, you're not, in my entire lifetime, I've never seen a safety be Caleb Downs or anything particularly close to Caleb Downs. I mean, even Kyle Hamilton is such a talented safety. He didn't have the range that this kid does. How many of you, anybody watching, feel free to comment if you know a safety that was able to play the slot, the linebacker, rush the passer, play over the top, and then comes out and returns kicks. He was the best return man for Ohio State the last 2 years, right? Like Ohio State, one of the best teams in the nation with depths of talent. Whether you don't want to put your starters out there, they're putting their best defender out there on kick returns. I mean, that just tells you how good of a football player Caleb Downs is. So,
and it stretched from school to school too, because he was at Alabama and equally as impressive.
Yeah. I mean, you can go down a long list of talented safeties in the NFL. They transform your team. They will be the focal point of your defense. Caleb Downs, one of those guys you have to find every play. Dylan Thieneman's one of those plays. Kamari Ramsey, another one of those talented players that I like. I would throw Genesis Smith in there. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is a super talented athlete. Yeah. All these guys that you got to find. You got to find them on the field, and they're going to make an impact. Definitely, these are players you look at for the Patriots at the end of the first round, guys that the Chiefs should look at the beginning of the second round if they're on the board. If Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is on the board with the 40th pick, Brett Veach should run the pick to the table. If Caleb Downs is on the board at pick 9, Brett Veach should run the pick to the table. He should be the number 1 player on the Chiefs board.
But probably not both those guys.
Not both. I mean, if we did, I'm sure it'd make it work. But I can't overstate how good Caleb Downs is. Again, hate throwing the word generational around, and I know that's like a huge no-no in the draft community. Come at me. Caleb Downs is a generational safety. I'm not letting that. I've never seen somebody better.
Yeah, no, it's a generational, as long as it doesn't get thrown around every single draft cycle. Or like last year, it was like, there's multiple generational outliers or whatever. I'm like, there can't be so many generational guys. Okay. The word generational means once in a generation. Okay. It's like people who have the GOAT conversation and they're like, well, this is the GOAT of the 90s, but this is the GOAT. No, GOAT all time. The whole point is that there's one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw somebody say that Kenyon Sadiq was a generational tight end talent. I thought I was going to lose my mind.
Jeez, I don't even think he was the best tight end in Oregon, to be honest.
Right. Right.
I like Jamar Johnson a lot, but every time I tried to, this is not a tight end episode, so I'm like, but every time I tried to watch Kenyon Sadiq tape, I tried to turn on Oregon and I tried to pay attention to the tight end, and Jamar Johnson was always the guy who jumped off the page to me. And it was like, whether it was blocking, whether it was receiving, making big plays at big moments, Kenyon Sadiq, I'm out on him. I'm not as impressed with him as some others are.
I like him, but he's not even the best tight end of the last 365 days. So I don't know how we're calling him generational. That's just crazy to me. So
he's not even the second best tight end of the last 365 days.
Exactly.
Like both Loveland and Warren, I would have ranked ahead of him.
100%.
Just side note, by the way, I noticed about 3 seconds after I put this picture up, I screwed up the names on this one too. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren's the guy in the middle. The guy catching the ball on the right's Kamari Ramsey, I'm pretty sure. Moving on to the second group of safeties, because we're really, I know we're over on time. I don't know if you have anywhere to be. I do not.
I don't
Perfect. This is pretty much what I do with my time is draft stuff anyway. So
amen, man. That's exactly what I'm doing when I'm done with this.
Facts. So I said next group. It's actually the third group that I've got a guy that you mentioned in. But this is playmakers. And look, these guys are slightly different players. Kyle Lewis is actually listed as a linebacker. He played linebacker at Pittsburgh. He's a little bit of a tweener. We talked about him. I've talked about him in the past. I'm not sure, depending on where you have him. To me, I comp him to like a Marte Mapu type player here in New England. Jalen Kilgore, another guy who there's questions about his position, where he's going to fit in. And Bud Clark, this is a guy who's just got a nose for the football, playmaker, safety, definitely. But these are the guys who are they're going to make plays. They're going to have the eye-popping plays. Kyle Lewis, especially at the Senior Bowl, man, he really popped off those running back coverage routes that it's like you're lucky to cover those right. You're lucky to get a hand on the ball, and he was intercepting them regularly, like several of them. It wasn't just a one-off sort of thing. Talk about these guys as a group, however it is you see fit to group them together.
Yeah, I'll also I'll throw one more name in here when we get there, but first I'll start with Kyle Lewis. I have Kyle Lewis listed as a safety. It is rare that you see players make that move from linebacker to safety. It can be a little bit tough, but as a linebacker or as a safety, regardless of where he wants to play, Kyle Lewis will be in the box, whatever you want to label him as. He's going to play mostly in the box. He's more than capable of keeping up with tight ends and running backs in coverage, but he'll also come up and tackle. He's 225 pounds, so he'll hit you. He's going to be a really, really good nickel linebacker. I mean, that really is what it feels like to me. you can have him out there and label him as a linebacker and also throw out a nickel corner and be perfectly content with their ability to try to play the run defense. Um, he's just ridiculous as an athlete. I mean, seriously, you don't expect a guy who is 225 pounds to keep up with running backs, tight ends, corners, or slot receivers. Just really tough to see him failing in the NFL unless he's put in the worst fit imaginable. Jalen Kilgore is somebody that I list as a slot corner. He's listed as a safety. I'm a huge fan of Jalen Kilgore. He was my slot corner one entering this year until my now slot corner one, Keontae Scott, blew up college football this year and is somebody that, as far as when I make my big board, I don't really take positional value too much into consideration. And while some people don't value nickel corner anywhere near enough, Keontae Scott's a top 10 player on my board. And Keontae Scott was so good this year for Miami. Just everything that Miami ever needed him to do, he was doing it. He was locking down slot corners in coverage. Wasn't the best all the way down the field, which is probably like the only major knock I have on him. Not a ton of top end speed. So, if the play breaks down, he's not going to be a great deep coverage guy, but a lot of times you're going to be running zone with the safety help over the top. So that's perfectly fine by me. Great blitzer, great tackler. 6 foot run 90 reminds me a lot of, I know we're got a lot of Patriots fans, but if y'all remember L'Jarius Sneed with my Chiefs, tons of things that'll remind you of him. He comes up and jams the hell out of you, and just a super, super talented player. So I would say that, Kilgore, Scott, you got like Dalen Everett you could look at up there, Stukes, who we already mentioned earlier, Robert Spears Jennings, a bunch of other guys like that are going to be listed as, maybe safeties, maybe corners. That's what that slot corner is, kind of a hybrid of the both of them. Kilgore is going to fall into that category. I don't know why South Carolina ever played him over the top at any point. He clearly was the best as a slot corner. So
South Carolina kind of did the Clemson thing this year where they were very, very underwhelming despite having a plethora of talent. The major difference being all their guys weren't seniors or, out of eligibility or definitely bound for the NFL draft either way. They brought a lot of those guys back. Maybe they'll have a better year next year. I don't know.
Yeah, Shane Beamer and Dabo Sweeney are on short leash at this point.
Yeah, you would think so.
And then looking at Bud Clark's somebody I have graded highly, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, Bud Clark does play a less valuable position because they don't play the same type of safety. And that's something that can be kind of hard to grasp for a lot of people. Bud Clark is a true free safety. Bud Clark isn't a guy that's going to be playing in the box. He's 6'1", 185. If Bud Clark is in the box, you're running the ball straight at him. You're double teaming the big defensive tackle on the line and telling your running back to run him right over. He's not a bad tackler, but he's not a great tackler. He's not a thumper. He's not going to hit you hard. But over the top, this guy's instincts are ridiculous. This is what showed up at the Senior Bowl. He was all over the field. He was really, really on top of the ball, made plays on the ball, has incredible ball skills, a super talented player, straight up free safety, minimal risk. If you draft Bud Clark, that's the first note that I put about him. Almost no risk as far as what you're getting. You know what you're getting. You're getting the best free safety in the class. May not be a position that teams are looking for super highly now. It may be an early day 3 type of deal, but when you get him, you know what you're getting from him.
Okay. Well, yeah, nice. And he's another guy that makes a lot of plays on the ball, always around the ball. You kind of see there's a couple guys like that in this class where you kind of put like Bud Clark, Kyle Lewis, Jacob Rodriguez, guys that have, questionable athletic traits maybe, but they're always around the damn football. They're always making plays. Now these are kind of the lesser known guys, if you will. Not quite the namesake that like a Caleb Downs would be, or even Dylan Thieneman's got a lot of hype from Oregon. Maybe they play in a program that's a little smaller or what have you. But Jalen Husky, Genesis Smith, Zakee Wheatley, AJ Halsey, I've heard all of them talked about in the 40 to 60, 40 to 70 range, something like that. Late round 2, early round 3. That to me is where like the meat of this safety class really is. What do you like? Who do you like best about this group? I guess, and just just give us a little bit on each one of them if you can.
Yeah, you didn't miss with the graphic here. You got 4 guys that are in my top 10. There's only one guy out. We only showed 9, right? Now we showed 10 guys total. So
10
there's one
total,
guy.
but one of them was
Bud Clark.
listed as a corner, right?
Yeah. So there's Lewis was there, and then I have Husky, Wheatley, Halsey, and
Oh,
Ramsey are all
Downs.
going to
Downs was the guy I didn't have
Downs.
pictured.
Yeah.
That's who it was.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's okay. Who cares? So there's only one guy that I have in my top 10 that wasn't pictured here. You got 7, my number 5 guy with Genesis Smith, got my number 7 with Jalen Husky. You got my number 9 with AJ Halsey, and my number 10 was Zakee Wheatley. I'm fans of all of these guys, all guys that I have in the top 100. I think this defensive back class is really, really strong. I'll start with Genesis Smith. I think that he is one of those hybrid guys that can play in the box, can play in the slot, can play over the top. He's not going to be the most dominant athlete. He's not going to quite be what Caleb Downs is as a blitzer, or as an athlete with the ball, as a returner even. He's not one of those types of guys, but is really versatile, knows where to be, is there at the right time, and has one of those skill sets that defensive coordinators love because they can move him around. Zakee Wheatley is super fun. I have him at 10, but is another one of those like versatile guys. He can look a bit thin. He's 6'3", 200, so sometimes can struggle with the tackling portion. And on the opposite end of the spectrum is AJ Halsey, who is not a bit thin, is a bit thick at 220 pounds back there, 5'11", 220. A completely different player, not quite the coverage guy that Wheatley is, and struggles some in zones. Similar to the gripe that I had with Trotter earlier, AJ Halsey's first step is always forward. He wants to get to the ball. His eyes are in the backfield. He wants to hit you. I have no problem with him playing up in a box type of role in the NFL. And then Jalen Husky is it hurts me that he's in a Bowling Green jersey on here. I remember him transferring to my Terps, but that's totally okay. Jalen Husky was so good for Maryland this year. Just a turnover machine, has great hands. He was a corner. He was a former corner with Bowling Green. That's how he started. He came to Maryland. He was a corner, was an abysmal corner. Just terrible. Could not play at the Big Ten level as a corner. Moved to safety, much better at safety. His instincts are there. The athleticism to play corner just wasn't. It's hard to play corner. Corner's the hardest position on the field. So that's probably the biggest concern with Husky is you can't consistently play him in the nickel. You can't move him around a ton. He's really that hybrid strong safety that'll play some in the slot. He'll hit some, but really just knows where to be. He forces turnovers. That's the most valuable thing you can have on a defense. I'll throw one more name out there that isn't as well known. And there are issues with this player that I'll mention, and I don't know him. I don't know anything about him. I don't have interviews for him, but Miles Rouser is somebody that I would keep an eye on. I've mentioned him several times. He's from Arizona State and other places I've talked about him. He is my number 8 safety in the class off of pure like skills alone. If you go back, watch the Arizona State defense, he really came to my attention after I watched linebacker Keyshawn Elliott, who I was looking for after, Dane Brugler had talked about him, and a couple of other people I heard talked about how good Keyshawn Elliott was. Dude, Miles Rouser's everywhere. He's all over the place in coverage as a tackler, just one of those guys that like he wants to be around the ball, man. I want players that want to play football. Miles Rouser looks like he lives and dies for this. And then there is, and I'll mention he has some off the field concerns. He committed to Arkansas as a 4-star recruit, ended up at Campbell because apparently he was running some like carjacking ring. I have no idea how all, yeah. When you go by ghost on the internet, you never really know what you're going to get. But Miles Rouser is a very, very talented player. I'm not in the interview room. I don't have his legal documents. I don't know what he was convicted of or not convicted of or accused of or any of that stuff. All I know is this kid's a really good football player, and if his interviews check out and teams are confident that he'll be fine to play in the league and not Rashee Rice himself, I'm very excited for him.
And listen, he was running the ring, so at very least he's a good leader.
Right. Yeah, that's it. He knows how to direct the defense. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Listen, silver linings. Sometimes it's about silver linings.
Exactly.
All right. Well, look, at the end of the day, safety is an interesting spot because it's, you need the athleticism, you need that stuff. But, the traits that really make a great safety are not really measured at the combine. The play recognition, communication, the ability to tackle. And really, what's most important is that the coaches need to trust you. You're the last line of
Yeah.
defense. If they get past you, then they score. So if coaches don't trust you, you're not on the field, period. And as I keep saying throughout these episodes, being on the field, that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get on the field for plays. You're just trying to get reps, because from reps comes opportunity. And from opportunity, then you grow your career. Um,
Yeah.
so, overall at the combine, look, what you're trying to do is you're trying to confirm film. You're trying to, guys who have bad drills, it raises questions. You've got to go back to the film. You're not reaching many, if any, conclusions at the combine. You're reinforcing what you already think, questioning what you think, or in some cases, ruling guys out, primarily in those interview rooms and in the medical tent, whatever they do. I'm sure it's a room. It's not a tent, but in the in the medical doctor checkup room, that's where
The
you're going to get a
MRI
lot of guys cut.
office.
Yeah.
Just the one
Um,
big MRI machine.
yeah, and a lot of
Yeah.
those times those things are quiet. We don't necessarily hear all the details or any of the details sometimes.
Yeah, I'll say for the combine that especially with this, especially with DBs, which I love talking about and I've covered for many years now. Um, Defensive backs are all different. You kind of have to know what you watched on film. For some of them, the combine matters more than others. Um, I, Caleb Downs will probably not participate in the combine. He shouldn't. I don't care what numbers he puts up. If he runs a 5.0, doesn't matter to me, man. I've seen him play. There's but Emmanuel McNeil Warren played at smaller Toledo, kind of had a different type of experience. That's going to be a more. I want to see how you tested. Toledo had 3 NFL defensive backs this year, and so you want to see how much of Emmanuel McNeil Warren was like maybe him getting targeted a lot. I still think he's one of the most talented athletes. If he goes and has a even close to a Nick Amanwari combine, I mean, you look at his stock go through the roof. That's one of those things. I think you'll see Sayer Wright from Nebraska will have a pretty good combine. He's a great athlete. Several of these guys, that's really what it's going to matter. I mean, Prysock, who we mentioned earlier, he had some teams will have some concerns about his getting flagged, but similar to what they have about Davis and Igbinosun. But if you can move, I can teach a guy not to grab.
Yeah,
So
you can't teach a guy to be fast or quick, but you can teach him.
Oven mitts in practice, man. Oven mitts in practice. That's what they'll do to him. I'm so serious. So they definitely will want to see how these guys measure. They'll want to see how they move. It matters a lot more for corners than it does for safeties, because at the end of the day, if the safety's in the right spot, they can stand still and just make the play. So that's what it is. With corners, you got to keep up with the best and the fastest and the quickest and the strongest. So if you don't test like you can do that, you probably can't.
Yeah, and I mean the athleticism matters more for the corners than the safeties.
100%.
But the head stuff matters more for the safeties than the corners.
Yep.
Look, generally, by and large, the further you get out towards that boundary, the more you're on your own. You're on an island, Wide receivers are divas. Corners can be a little tapped. That's fine. Y'all can be out there on Crazy Island on your own. You're not affected. But the head stuff, the mental part of the game, that's the safety side. That's where you really got to excel there.
It's my favorite thing about Davis and Igbinosun, probably that I didn't even mention when I was talking about how much I love his player profile. Davis and Igbinosun is so annoying. If you're a receiver, you must get so annoyed going against that guy, because he comes out and does not back down from anybody. He is talking the whole game. He's aggressive. He hits you. He's yapping. He's yelling. He's got something to him. Like, I want my corners to to be fair, this isn't always the case. This is partially why your Patriots ended up with Christian Gonzalez. A lot of people said that he fell because he wasn't talking enough. He wasn't yapping enough. He didn't have the swagger. There's a portion of that I care about, and I like it, and it is a plus, because having confidence as a corner is huge. You can be a silent demon. Christian Gonzalez was always confident. You can see confidence in a corner. If they're backpedaling off the first step and they're scared to come up and touch you, there's an extent to which you're like, okay, you're not going to be that great in man coverage if you're afraid of getting burned every time. Davison Igbinosun might get burnt twice a game, but he'll come in and force a turnover. Christian
Right.
Gonzalez, probably never going to get burned. That guy's just different. But like, you go down some of these dudes, D'Angelo Pons may get burnt once or twice, but he's never backing down from somebody. This is the thing that is the mentality of a corner that's like willing to go back out there. No corner is a perfect game. You're going to go in against 30 routes a game. You're probably going to leave a guy open for 5 of them. And if you leave a guy open for 5 of them, you're going to make 20 mil a year.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's all about having a short memory too. And look, nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Christian Gonzalez up here get burned a couple times this year, especially when he wasn't ready for it.
Right.
That's actually what I had said going into the Super Bowl is like the times that I saw him get burned, like AD Mitchell got him, but you don't expect AD Mitchell to get you. So he kind of got caught off guard, and then he was like, oh, I got to take this guy seriously. My bad.
Yeah.
And then took him seriously. It's that Emmanuel Forbes pick, man, that's going to go down as one of the worst picks.
I live in the DC. Era. I live in the DC area. You'll never hear Ron Rivera is never going to live that down around here. Dude,
awful.
It is brutal. You should have seen. I was watching the draft with my friend. It was like one of the first times we had like a big like party at my apartment. Like a bunch of people came over and we were watching. And he was like, "What? Why would we do?" It was like, Patriots got a good one with him, and nowhere near the same player, but that same type of athletic skill set. Gonzalez is a little bigger, but Igbinosun has that type of like athletic profile. Gonzalez is just different. I comparing somebody to Gonzalez doesn't make a ton of sense because that guy was just another level of good when he came out of that draft. No reason he should have made it out of the top 10. Same thing's going to say with. I'll say with Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs no reason he should make it out of the top 10. There's a bunch of Ohio State defenders that shouldn't make it out of this first round.
Now, I don't want to go too far down this path because it's slightly off topic because it's Chiefs related, but you're a Chiefs guy. So I've heard a lot of rumors or kind of noise, I guess, maybe the past day or two about McDuffie.
Trade him.
You think you think you're done with him?
Look, you guys, I'll go right back at you. You're a Patriots fan. We got Patriots listeners. Bill Belichick used to say and was the master of I'd rather get off a guy 2 years early than 1 year late. Right? Trent McDuffie's not the type of guy that is going to fall off. This is kind of what we did with Joe Thuney. We got rid of Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney just had a great year. But Joe Thuney's also about to be like 35. Right? Then they're going to have to pay him and all this stuff. We're going to have to pay Trent McDuffie. And the Chiefs
McDuffie's younger, right?
Yeah. He's ending his rookie contract. It's not a matter of age. But I say too late we're going to have to pay him. And it's the money that matters. And the Chiefs grow corners on trees. I mean, seriously, it's like, it's hard to justify paying a corner in Kansas City when you know you can get a second round pick and we can probably draft one in the 5th round and he'll be a starter next year. Noel Williams is looking good already. Drafted him out of Cal last year after he had 7 interceptions. He looked good when he played. Rashawn Fenton a couple years ago was pretty good. Charvarius Ward was a UDFA. Marcus Peters was pretty good. L'Jarius Sneed was a 5th round pick. You got the Isaiah Watson's, or not Isaiah Watson, Watson. I'm forgetting his first name, and I don't know how I'm forgetting his first name. I love the guy. Is going to be Jalen Watson. Jalen Watson is going to be a free agent this offseason. He was a 7th round pick from Washington State. The Chiefs grow these guys on trees. So I just don't see the justification in paying a corner. We didn't do it for Sneed. Sneed was one of the best corners in the NFL at the time. We traded him for a 3rd round pick. So I can see the same thing happening with McDuffie. I don't think they'll get a first for him, but if they get offered a top 50 pick, I pull the trigger immediately.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, listen, that's going to wrap things up today. We went way over the normal hour, but there's a lot of really good information, a lot of really good stuff there. I really got to thank you so much for your time, Matt. That was excellent stuff there. Look, anything you want to add in or just plug your site, plug your work, etc.?
Yeah, you can follow me on X at Chabot Sports. I write on a website called Next Up CFB. I just have my rankings, big boards, things like that, small player profiles, all that good stuff. Feel free to check it out there. probably ran over because I love talking about this stuff so much. I could do it all day if I had to. We can make this 5 hours for all I care. So um, I hope you enjoyed it. I think, Randy here knows what he's talking about. It's always good to go back and forth with people. Everybody has different opinions, so it's always good to listen to what other people have to say. I think you uh, always learn for the more you listen, the more you hear, and so that's the best part about this community is it's fun to talk to other people who are seeing the same things that you are and coming to different conclusions. That's the whole point.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. It brings all types of different people to. I was thinking when you introduced yourself at the start of this, I have kids older than you.
Sure.
Like, it's just all different kinds of people there that like, it's an interesting, it's just so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
something
my
I was
at
thinking
my
about when you, oh, go
Go
for it.
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it was something I was thinking about when you were talking about guys not showing up at the combine, how like you see that differently than my generation sees it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, that it's just different perspectives and it kind of gives everybody the ability to see new things, I guess, that I wouldn't normally see or you wouldn't normally see.
Yeah, at my job, they are making fun of me because I'm the only person in our office with a birthday in the 2000s. So that's it's like a whole shtick. So
Yeah, you make us feel
yeah,
old. You make us
yeah,
feel
that's
old.
that's what everybody says. I'm not trying to, I promise. But yeah, and I love this. I'm younger to it. I bring some of a new perspective to it for some people, and for other people, I bring the same perspective. But again, at the end of the day, we're all watching the same thing, and I also think that while I am new to this, I think everybody can learn from what they get right, what they get wrong, and what other people have to say. You learn a lot more from the things you get wrong. I've said a lot of wrong things in my time covering the draft, but I've also said a lot of right things, and so um, this is the way it goes. But if you listen, I just provide another perspective. I'm never going to tell you that I'm always right, but I like to think I'm right the majority of the time.
Hey, fair enough. That's all we can do,
Yeah.
man. All right. Well, hey, thanks again so much for your time. You had some really great insights. I thought you brought a lot of value to this, and I think the audience is going to get a lot out of it. Thank you so much. Go check him out on Twitter, Chabot Sports. That's with a T, but it's silent. Um,
And a
so
C. And a
yes, yes,
C
yes.
for Chabot. Yeah, nobody ever gets that right, but it's okay. You got it the first time, so
um,
I'm
hey, it's you gotta guess on these things sometimes, and it's
yeah,
50-50, right?
yeah.
But all right, and I will catch you around the Draft Professors Network. I'd love to have you on again, maybe post combine, pre-draft, post-draft. We'll touch base on Twitter and see what can work out for our schedules. And look forward to get you back here next time. Everybody else, everybody listening, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, share with your friends, tell your friends about us. You're going to get a lot of really good draft coverage here. Thanks again for your time, Matt. Have a great day, everyone.